get a top 1% score on the ACT. So as you can see with my scores, I started off with a 33, then went to a 34, and then a 35. So I'm just going to go through the overall process on how I bettered my scores over time. So to start off with general tips, if you have not had like really any practice in the past, you are going to first want to get a baseline score to figure out where you're at for each section pretty much. So what I mean by that is you can either take a full practice test. You're going to be really like worn out after because it takes, hours, or you can just, maybe each day take a section or two and then figure out what your scores are, just like where you're standing. And then what you're going to want to do next is get your two lowest scores. Those sections, you're going to want to focus on those at first. So the key pretty much is going to be just going over old practice tests, like just over and over again. And what the key of success isn't necessarily just doing the work, it is reviewing your mistakes, because your mistakes are what you don't understand. So where you can get all these old practice tests at is crackact.com is extremely useful. These are all old ACT tests, real ACT tests from previous years, like all the way back from 1996, and here's one June 2021. I would start with these more recent ones, but ACT, SAT, all these companies, they reuse questions a lot. So what you get, you will have already understood. So whenever you get something wrong, and you're going through your questions missed at the very end of your review, I would recommend like writing them down, maybe trying to redo the problem, and just fully understanding, because that is where you're going to improve. You're going to improve from improving on your mistakes and not getting it wrong again. English is a section with a lot of questions but not much time, so you're going to want to already kind of mastered, the basic grammar rules and stuff like that. So, but more specific tips though, less is usually right, in the sense that if it's a sentence type question asking like, what could be put, here, like look at number 5, what could be put in the place here, usually the one with the least amount of words is going to sound the cleanest. So always keep that in mind if you see a question like this. So eliminate similar words. What I mean by this is when you have questions like the synonym type questions. So if you have a question like a 35 here, you're going to have words that are similar. So most precisely characterizes the arrangement of match success, haphazard. So, collection is very similar to batch and range. Jumble is a word that is more, it kind of characterizes messiness. So that is going to be the correct answer here. Again, just, you look at all those words, you find the ones that are similar, and those can't be the answer. So you eliminate those and you look for the one that's different. Just having an understanding on how these are connected is going to help you out a lot. Keep in mind, about your fanboys and stuff like that, conjunctions, and how these have to be connected, and that's a really easy way to eliminate some questions. When you're studying math, you can't get too focused on the very end. What I mean by that is your focus needs to be on mastering these first 40 questions. So the questions get harder the further down you go. So you need to make sure you have a really good understanding on how to do these first 40. So since we're going for like a top 1% score, a 34 in this section is around 5 questions missed. It changes, depending on the test. So it is kind of hard to tell. But so if we're trying to miss around 5 questions, we are going to ideally want to miss those around the 50 to 60 range, because these questions are the hardest and they're going to take up the most time. And because we only have 60 minutes for 60 questions, this is where we're going to want to be missing questions. And so make sure you have a really good understanding on how to do these first 40, and try to avoid careless mistakes from 40 to 50. So this area, the questions are going to be a little bit harder, but not as hard as 50 to 60. So just make sure you try hard here so you can really make mistakes around this area. For reading, what really works for me is reading the full story. The reason why I recommend this strategy is because if you do not read the full story, yeah, most of the questions, or a lot of the questions, are just about minor details, which you can get kind of through skimming. But there are questions about overall character development and story details that you kind of need to read the whole story for. So read the full story, kind of do it quickly, but make sure you underline / mark like important details and things that stick out. Science was honestly my most confusing and brutal section. The curve on science can be awful. So when I got my 35, that test, the curve for science, a 36 on the science section, was 0 questions missed, and missing 1 question brought you to a 34. There wasn't even a 35. For science, I recommend going straight to the questions. For example, let's look at this practice test. Don't start by reading like any of this pretty much. Let's go to the first question. Like in experiment 2, this question is about this graph. So you can just go here, combinations of pH and H2O2, shortest RT. So you're just gonna like look at these and look for the smallest RT. That's all you need. I know not every question is like that, but most of them are these graph-based questions. Only start to read the details once the question asks for it. Say we have a question that actually asks about some of the things like about the experiment that were needed, then yeah, go back and like look at that. But your goal here, it's 35 minutes for 40 questions. Your goal is going to be to try to go pretty quickly through these. So for these graph type questions, you're going to want to be going really fast. And then for the questions based on the experiment itself, that's when you're going to have to take a little bit more time to kind of understand. I hope that helped, guys. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I'll try to get back to you. Thank you.